Namaskar, my dear friends. This is 11th video on Panchadasi of Swami Vidyarnaya, a wonderful book for sadhakas in the field of Advaita Vedanta. This is a very important book for sadhakas pursuing the sadhana for self-realization and liberation. So this video starts with chapter number 10. Self is non-attached. It was shown above that the words desiring what of the scriptural text indicate the illusoriness of the world. Now it will be explained how the words for the sake of whose desire are intended to inculcate the truth of the non-attachedness of the self. The words for the sake of whose desire predicate the absence of enjoyship from the self. By the knowledge of the non-attached nature of the self, its enjoyership is negated. The contention that as the negation of a thing must be preceded by its position, and as the self is by nature not an enjoyer, there can be no negation of enjoyership, can be refuted by the citation of the scriptural text which attribute enjoyership to the self in the empirical sense. There are scriptural passages which say that husband, wife, son, etc. are not for the sake of their enjoyment, but that they are for the sake of the enjoyment of the self. Who is the enjoyer? Is it the immutable self, or is it the reflection of intelligence, or is it the combined form of both, the immutable and the reflection? The immutable does not attain enjoyership because it is non-attached. The transformation called the conceit of pleasure and pain is what is known as enjoyment. Hence the predication of enjoyership in the case of the self would be tantamount to the self-contradictory statement that the self is both immutable and changing. Nor is it proper to predicate enjoyership of the reflection of intelligence. The reflection of intelligence is subject to transformation because it is dependent on the changing intellect. But since the reflection has no independence of its own, and since its prototype, the immutable self, is unchanging and not an enjoyer, the reflection also cannot be an enjoyer. Therefore, the combined form of the immutable and the reflection is designated in the world by the word enjoyer. Enjoyership is adventitious to the immutable. When scripture speaks of the self as the enjoyer, the reference is to the combined form of the immutable and the reflection. There is no real enjoyership for the immutable. This is the purport of all the scriptural statements. Questioned by Janka as to which is the self, Yajnavalkya began his answer by describing the self of the nature of knowledge present in all the senses, and ended with the statement, this Purusha is unattached. All the scriptures which are engaged in the enquiry, who is the self, commence with the combined form of the immutable and the reflection, and culminate the pure immutable self. The empirical self, which is the enjoyer induced by non-discrimination, superimposes on itself the reality of the immutable and thinking its enjoyership to be absolutely real, it never desires to relinquish it. The scriptural text which declare that for the desire of the self everything is dear, etc., do not predicate enjoyership of the immutable, but only of the empirical self, which is a mixture of the immutable and reflection of intelligence. Scripture restates the empirical uses when it says that husband, wife, etc., are for the enjoyment of the enjoyer himself. The objects of the enjoyment are the complements not of the absolute but of the empirical self. The restatement of the scripture is for enjoining the direction of one's love to the self, drawing it away from the sense objects, since the objects of enjoyment are subsidiary to the enjoyer. Let there be no attachment to the objects but only to the principle, the self. There is traditional code which says that constant love of objects which is found in those who are devoid of discrimination. Let it, O Vishnu, depart from my heart which is ever remembering you. The purport of the code is this: with the intensity with which the ignorant love the objects of sense, the enlightened should love the self. Those who are attached to the self should give up their attachment to the sense objects. The person who is desirous of discerning the self withdraws his love from the confluence of sense objects and directs it to the self, just as the vulgar rivet their attention on garland, sandal, paste, dress, damsel, etc. The man who desires release directs his attention to the enjoyer. He remains constant in the contemplation of the self, just as those who want victory in the warfare of words are immersed in the study of poetry, drama, logic, etc. The one who longs for liberation engages himself attentively in the quest for truth, like the heaven seeker who faithfully performs chanting, meditation, etc. He bestows supreme faith on the self, even as the yogin who desires of spiritual powers achieves one-pointedness of the mind. After great effort, he exerts himself constantly in spiritual enquiry and establishes himself in the knowledge of the self. In the various fields of activity detailed above, practice produces skillfulness and security of success. The yogin studies his mind and obtains spiritual powers. The student of literature gains mastery in his field of study, as also victory over his opponents. The heaven seeker gains his object through chanting and meditation. The mumukshu likewise achieves through practice the lucidity and clearness of his power to discriminate. He discerns the distinction and disparity between the self and the not self. By him who discriminates the real nature of the enjoyer from the aggregate of sense objects through co-presence and co-absence is ascertained the non-attachedness of the witness in the states of waking, etc. The objects which are experienced in the states of waking, dream, and deep sleep are distinct by themselves. Each of these states differs from the rest in the character of its content. The objects experienced in waking seem to be relatively permanent and coherent, whereas those perceived in dream are fantastic and fictitious. The dream is a carnival of images. Sleep is a unique experience where there is ignorance as well as bliss. In and through these distinct states and distinct objects, there threads the one and the same self. The self, whatever it sees there in the different states, does not become comfortable to it. For this purusa is indeed non-attached. That or this self attached to the repose of sleep and moving therein merely sees merit and demerit and again according to the usual custom runs towards every sense. That which manifests the universe of waking, dream, deep sleep, etc. That Brahm am I, knowing thus he is released from all bondage. The self is to be thought of as being single and the same in waking, dream, and sleep. The self which knows itself to be distinct from the three experiences has no more transmigration and no more trouble. The object of enjoyment, the enjoyer, and the enjoyment which are to be found in the three states of experience, distinct from them, I am the bare intelligence, the ever auspicious witness. The scriptural text quoted above teaches that the immutable self is without attachment, agency, enjoyership, etc. When the truth is discerned in this manner, it is clearly determined that enjoyership, etc., belong to the changing Chidabhasa, which is indicated by the word Vidyarnaya. The reflection of intelligence is cognized to be illusory through the testimony of scripture and the evidence of experience. Prakriti makes the Jiva and the Lord as reflections. The word is compared to the magician's feet, and since the reflection of intelligence is a constituent of the world, it is also illusory like the magical show. The illusoriness of the reflection of intelligence is experienced by the witness in sleep where the reflection is non-existent. Thus, through revelation and reason, the reflection of intelligence realizes its unreality. When such discrimination sets in, the reflection desires no more enjoyment. The person who has stretched himself on the ground with a desire to die will not long for his wedding. Similarly, the reflection which knows itself to be illusory, how can it desire for sense enjoyment which is equally illusory? Unlike the ignorant, the enlightened man does not have conceit in objective enjoyment. He is ashamed of calling himself the enjoyer, and like the one whose nose is damaged, he reaps the result of his prarabdha without any gusto or relish. If he does not book to think that enjoyership rests with him, need it then he said that he never imposes enjoyership on the witness self to declare the absence of enjoyership from the absolute. The Vidyarnaya text implies the words for the sake of whose desire. If the superimpositions of enjoyership on the self be removed, the objects of sense cease to lure us and there is an end to the feverish pursuit of the ways of the body. Chapter 11. Three bodies, three fever. There are three bodies, three gross, the subtle and the causal, and for each of them there is a peculiar fever. In the gross body there are innumerable kinds of diseases brought about by the three humorous wind, bile and brought about by the three humors, wind, bile, and phlegm, bad odor, wounds, thirst, etc., are also the fevers of the gross body. Desire, anger, etc., are calmness, restraint, etc., are disease present in the subtle body. Like desire, etc., calmness, etc., are also fevers because while the former trouble men by their acquirement, the latter torment men by their non-acquirement. The fever present in the subtle body is set forth in the Chandogya Upanishad by Indra. In the causal body, the self knows neither itself nor any other object and remains as if annihilated. In that state, there exists the seed of misery in the form of the impressions of impending acts. These fevers are thought to be natural to the body, since if the former be removed, the latter do not persist. As the thread is to the cloth, fur to the woolen shawl, and clay to the pot, as are the fevers indispensable to the bodies. The bodies are fever made. Fever is the stuff of the bodies. In the reflection of intelligence, there is no kind of fever natural to it. Since for intelligence there is seen only the single nature of light. If fever be impossible even for the reflection needed, then he said that the witness is free from it, although there be the absence of ailment from the reflection of intelligence. The reflection identifies itself with the bodies through nescience and suffers from the heat of samsara, superimposing the absolute reality which is natural to the witness on itself and on the three bodies. The reflection deems the bodies to be its true form of existence. During the period of delusion, it suffers from the ills of the bodies, thinking that the fevers are innate in itself, just as the man with a family burns with agony should any of its members fall seriously ill. This unnecessary travail is born of ignorance and attachment. When there is discriminative knowledge, the delusion is dispelled and feverish pursuit of the bodies comes to an end. The cognition of the illusory snake is the cause of fear, running, etc., whereas the knowledge of the real rope destroys the apprehension of the snake with the result that the previous agitation, etc., are regretted. The reflection which has gained discriminatory knowledge expiates for its earlier association with the defect of illusoriness by taking refuge in the witness self, just as a sinner purifies himself by repeated baths in the sacred waters. The reflection becomes centered in the self by repeated meditation. It takes no pride in its former associations and does not wish to return to them. The crown prince who desires to rule over the kingdom acts according to the wishes of the king. The reflection whose goal of effort is release follows the way of the witness, learning from scripture that he who knows Brahma becomes Brahma alone. It makes its mind one-pointed and discerns Brahma only and nothing else, just as the man who desires to become a deva offers himself to be consumed by fire. The reflection loses itself to find itself. Chapter 12, Residue of Prarabdha. There is no release from reflectionness till the present body is ex- extirpated. The humanness of the man who desires to become a deva is not terminated indeed until his body is totally consumed. Even after the cognition of the robe, the palpitation of the heart, the shivering of the limbs, etc., are assuaged, only by degrees, and when the rope is enshrouded in twilight, it appears as the snake again. Likewise, the enjoyment which has already been commenced gets cooled only gradually and not all of a sudden or by force, and occasionally during the period of enjoyment there may be the cognition I am a mortal. By this transgression true knowledge is not destroyed. Knowledge is not worth a ceremonial observance, hence it has not followed rules and regulations. The residual impression of the prior experience may linger for a while, but that throws no impediment in the way of the knowledge of truth. The leader of the 10 travelers, when he is informed that he is the 10th individual, stops from striking his head against the ground and weeping. But all the same, the wounds which he has already received on his head heal only in the due course of time. The, the joy resulting from the cognition that the 10th man is not dead overpowers the pain caused by the wounds. Similarly, the gain of release lightens the burden of prarabdha, since there is not the rule that the individual who is released in embodiment will not have occasionally the cognition of humanness. He must discriminate whenever there occurs in him the apprehension of superimposition. Such repeated effort is seen, for example, in the case of a glutton who eats over and over again. The wounds sustained by the 10th man heal when they are properly dressed and bandaged. In the same way, prarabdha perishes when it is exhausted and extinguished by enjoyment. Chapter 13, State of Satisfaction. So far, the release from grief, the sixth state in the development of the jiva, has been explained as indicated in the Brihadaranyaka text by the words desiring what. The seventh is the state of satisfaction, which results as a consequence of Brahma knowledge. The satisfaction that results from sense objects is dependent and limited, whereas the satisfaction consequent on Brahma knowledge is without any limit and determination. When that supreme solace is gained, all obligations are fulfilled and all desires are quenched. Prior to the acquirement of true knowledge, man has many duties to be performed and many desires to be satisfied. He works for the pleasures of the world and the happiness of heaven, and he strives for release from his earthly bonds. But when once he attains Brahma knowledge, there is nothing else for him to do, because he has accomplished his object, reached his journeys, and he, he contrasts his state of felicity and peace with the miserable condition of those who are struggling and feels supremely satisfied. The ignorant men who wallow in the misery of the world pursue their desires in the hope of acquiring progeny, etc. But the man who has gained supreme happiness, what more should he desire, and why should he follow the way of the world? Those who aim is the attainment of heaven tread the path of karma, but he who is the self of all the worlds, why and wherefore should he engage himself in rituals and ceremonials? If it be asked whether the Jnani cannot indulge in activities for the sake of the welfare of the world, let those who are eligible for it do it by all means. Saviors like Vyasa and Sankara are entitled to preach to the world. Philosophers like Sankara come to the world with a mission to save it. They are like huge ships, the carriers of innumerable anguished souls across the sea of samsara. But the majority of those who are blessed with Brahma knowledge are not eligible for this task. The Jnani is devoid of any kind of activity, be it good or bad. Even the activities like eating, drinking, bathing, etc., which are attributed as indispensable to him, do not exist before his vision. The ignorant may speak of the Jnani that he is not free from activities, but that is no way affects him. The unlightened look with the eye of ignorance, whereas to the divine vision of the seer there is no action nor action bred miseries. For the Jnani, there is not even the obligation of study and reflection, since study is intended for those who do not know the truth and reflection for those who are troubled by doubts. Nor has the Jnani to meditate, for he is rid of all notions of the contrary, like conceit in the body, etc. The cognition I am a man, etc., which occasionally he may get, is not the result of any present perversity on his part. It is occasioned by the impression of his long practice, and it is not capable of obstructing his intuition. Meditation is not the remedy for the removal of this empirical usage, for empirical usage lapses of its own accord when prarabdha perishes. As long as the karma lasts, even 1,000 meditations cannot dislodge empirical uses. If those who do not seek release in embodiment but who desire relative pleasures practice meditation, let them do so. But the Jnani who understands that by his empirical uses there can be no harm to his realization, for what purpose should he meditate? Nor is there samadhi for him, since he has discarded already the projections of Maya. Both samadhi and projection are modifications of the mind, and a Jnani is one who has freed himself from the modifications of the mind. If it be said that samadhi is instrumental to the intuition of Dharma, then for him who possesses already the intuition of what uses the instrument, he has no obligation whatsoever, nothing to be apprehended or attained. He is centered in the self and is supremely satisfied therein. To the Jnani who is a non-agent and a non-enjoyer, there may occur activities which are scripturally enjoined or empirically occasioned, but by them he is no way affected. His actions are conditioned by prarabdha and he has no hand in them. Or even though there is nothing for him to be accomplished in this world, he may act in accordance with his scripture in order to save the world. His physical body may worship the deity, bathe in the holy waters, and take to the life of the mendicant. His speech sense may repeat the Vedic mantras or study the system of Vedanta. His intellect may meditate on the form of Vishnu or become merged in the bliss of Brahma. But he does nothing, or does he cause others to do anything. He is the witness of all things and thoughts without any conceit in the way of the senses and in the functions of his mind. There is no conflict between the man of works and the man of wisdom. They live in two different spheres which have nothing in common between them. They are like two seas separated by a vast stretch of land. The man of works is tied down to the activities of his body, speech, intellect, etc. But not so the witness. The Jnani is unattached because he knows himself to be the witness and has freed himself from the clutches of body, senses, and mind. Those who do not know the truth that knowledge and works have different contents quarrel in vain and become the targets of the ridicule of those who know. The man of works has no discernment of the witness, and the man who knows the truth realizes the witness to be Brahma. The two have nothing common to dispute about. The sphere of the Karmi's activity is non-self, while that of the Jnani's contemplation is the self. The Jnani understands the body, speech, intellect, etc. to be impermanent and illusory and relinquishes them. The Karmin sticks to them like a leech, deluding himself with the notion that they are the instruments to the final value of life. For the Jnani, tendency towards and turning away from activity are only par. Nirvirti, Nivritti, like a pravrti, is useless to him. If it be said that the turning away from activity is the cause of knowledge, then even the tendency towards activity is fruitful in the sense that it is helpful to the desire for knowledge. If it be maintained that there is not the tendency towards activity for the jnani, since he has no more desire for knowledge, then even because he is no more in need of knowledge, there is no necessity of nivritti for him. For the continued maintenance of his knowledge, which is accomplished by non-sublation, no other means is required. Neither nescience nor its product is capable of sublating knowledge, since both of them are sublated prior to the requirement of true knowledge. The products of nescience which have been sublated may appear to the senses, but by them knowledge is not sublated. They appear to be alive, but in reality they are dead. If even a living rat be incapable of killing a cat, how can a dead rat be capable of that deed? Who he who does not fall a prey even to the Pasu Shastra, how can he perish when pierced by fragile shaft? In the warfare between knowledge and the nescience, the former has come out victorious. Now, how can the victor who is well established be overpowered by the vanquished? Let the carcasses of nescience and its products remain. They are important to harm knowledge. Instead of causing fear, they stand as the symbol of the mighty strength of true knowledge. For the Jnani who is yoked to such knowledge, which is the enemy of nescience, there is nothing to be gained from pravrti or nivritti, which pertain to the body. The ignorant man who has not gained true knowledge has to be up and doing for the achievement either of heaven or of release. If the Jnani lives in the midst of the ignorant, he also acts like them. And when he finds himself amidst those who desire knowledge, he criticizes and eschews all activities in order to teach them the futility of works. That he should adapt himself to the level of the society in which he lives is but proper. By putting on the semblance of following the way of the ignorant, he in no way degrades himself. It is his mercy for those who are not as fortunate as he that makes him mingle with them. Like a father unto his children, he is compassionate unto them. When the child beats the parent and pushes him hither and thither, the latter is not angered. On the contrary, he feels a pride in being treated so by his darling. In the same way, the Jnani is not perturbed by the abuses of the ignorant, nor does he feel elated by their praises. He returns neither to them but acts in such a way as to arouse knowledge in them. His actions are governed by this one motive, that is, to give a lifting hand to those who struggle in the slough of misery. No other object has in this world than to help the ignorant to see the light. He feels satisfied because what has to be accomplished has been accomplished by him, and what has to be attained has been attained by him. He considers himself fortunate because he is blessed with the immediate vision of the eternal self. The bliss of Brahma is clearly manifest to him. His ignorance has taken to flight and he knows no misery born of samsara. He has achieved his life's end, attained the greatest human goal. There is nothing in the world to equal his contentment. His bliss knows no bounds. This is the state of him who has transcended the travails and turmoils of transmigration. So I end this chapter, I end this video here. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks a lot. Namaskar my dear friends. Namaskar. Next video number 12 will start with chapter 8. Elucidation of the immutable. Kutastha Dipa Prakarna. Thank you.